not who I am. I go by David. There's no Professor Blum in this class, just saying. And so we're here working now for about a year with Tim and Matt and Laura and everybody else, and Amy, of course, who's a friend of mine, just came to work here, to show you what work we've done, the students have done on the Legacy site. Tonight is a lot more information than we provided last time and the time before that and the time before that. So we're going to slow it down a little bit. Please hold your questions to the end. It's a little too disruptive if we start, I don't like this, I like that, we get that, but let them finish this. It will take 40 minutes or so. It's a lot of slides, and make notes, ask questions. We're here as long as we need to be. All the work you're seeing here is student work. It's not my work. Alex will introduce all of us, but I want to introduce Armageddon, who is my co-faculty lead on this project. And so the two of us have been guiding this with great input from your staff. This is by far the best client we've ever worked with in 12 years. You guys are really terrific. The project is not easy, as you know, so have at it, but at least let them get through their presentation before it goes somewhere else. Okay? Which is great, we like that, but not yet. Okay.
Thanks, David. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Holtz. I'm from the University of Washington's Master's in Real Estate Development program. Here with some urban planners, Sarah, Inga, Yingxi, Nick, and a few others that weren't able to make us here tonight, and University of Washington Tacoma's Urban Studies program, Sarah, Leslie, and Katie. So we want to show you all tonight what we've spent the last quarter doing a market study of your Legacy site. This is not all of the information. There's a lot of underlying data that is not in the slides that you're going to be seeing tonight, but we've done a lot of good work, and so we're excited to show it to you.
Light.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah from UW Tacoma in the bachelor's program, and I worked on the site analysis portion of this project with Katie and Leslie. And so you're going to be seeing some information about the developable areas and what is going on around the site and two potential access points. So our first step in this project was to look at the surrounding area of the site, and we chose to look at the clearest half mile around the site. And we chose half mile because it's a decent walk for many people, an even better drive. So in our catchment area analysis, we found that the nearby areas are mainly residential, single-family homes. We looked at the comprehensive plan, found that there is some kind of tentative plans for a town center to the south of the site. We also saw that there are some commercial areas to the southeast of the site, kind of in red over here. Right here. And here's the town center area. And of course you have the Lake Wilderness Trail on the west side here. We found that there are no roads that run into the site, just kind of Highway 169 that runs alongside the east. So after we looked at the catchment area, we knew that we needed to get some more details about what was going on inside the site. And the first thing we chose to look at was topography. So here you can see we received contour data from ESM Consulting on behalf of Maple Valley. And this map is using 2-foot contour lines. So it's measured every 2 feet. And we found that there are 2 major low point areas. So here's the first low point area along the western side. There's kind of a group of other low points on the northeast corner. There are 3 high points. There's this obviously large area right here, one area here, one area right here at the top. And the highest point of all the topography of this site is 606 feet, and the lowest point is 538 feet, and it tends to run from east to west for the topography. So after we looked at topography, we just had to measure the site, and we measured the site using ArcGIS 10.5. So we know the site is 51 acres, but we found the length of the sides of the site, and our longest sides are right up here at the top and on the western side. And I believe the market analysis group is going to talk more about what exactly could fit into this. So after we knew the measurements and kind of where the topography was, we saw that the land was showing us where we should look at other things that are happening inside the site. So the next thing we looked at was trees. And so this map is based off of tree survey data from a few quarters ago from other student William Perry, who conducted a tree survey. And we kind of identified two main tree types that we wanted to remain cognizant of in our site analysis. So that is the big leaf maples and the western red cedar tree right here. So the big leaf maples are kind of on the high point, the major high group of the site, and the western red cedars are on kind of a low-lying area. And we have found that we are recommending to preserve both of these trees types as much as possible. Of course, the big leaf maple, Maple Valley, but also it's preserving a environmentally sensitive area with the topography and everything. And then the western red cedars we're also recommending for preservation. They're kind of a fairly rare tree. They're mainly found in the Pacific Northwest. So it would be a nice tree type to have here on the site for people to look at and enjoy. So then we did some research about tree buffers in Washington State. And for this, we looked at Washington codes about tree buffers and natural areas around the edges of sites. And to do this, we found that the legacy site is a site class which indicates it requires a 140-foot buffer. So there's different sizes of buffers based on the site class of the parcel in Washington State. And these classes are based on state soil survey data. And the state soil survey data found that we are site class 4, 140-foot buffer. We know that the community has voiced a concern for a 200-foot buffer. This is the minimum amount that we found according to Washington State. And if you'd like to look up, we have listed the code right here. So we put all the pieces of the puzzle together, the topography, the tree types, the slope. So you can see here that we're recommending 3 main areas for development. There's this larger portion right here on the west. There's a portion right here and a portion over here. And then this little area that we're not recommending is based on tree type, the big leaf maple, the western red cedar, and areas where the topography intersects with those. So these are areas that we'd like to keep as a natural kind of buffer zone. You can keep the natural feel of the site. So after that, we decided to take it a step further. We say, well, how are we going to get into the site? And there's 2 options. One option kind of seemed to jump out more than the other. The first option is to have a road going in from Highway 169, where the speed limit is 45 miles per hour, which has some obvious problems for drivers or pedestrians because of the speed and the nature of the road. The other option is right here. So we would build a road or extend this road into the southern side of the site between this proposed town center area and the legacy site. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Alex with the market analysis group.
Thank you, Sarah. So as some of you know from the last time we spoke, we have been working with an idea for 3 distinct plans. Each have slight differences in them as how you're going to approach what you're going to do with the actual real estate of the legacy site. Since we saw you last, the majority of us as real estate students have been focusing on the value of the land itself and how developers would view it in that context. So here is a breakdown of the 3 plans and the acreage that we would have for each property type. Please do not, there it is. These names are just holding places. They don't, besides DigiPen, it does not explain anything in particular that would be in each of these categories. The active forest is something that Inga is going to speak on later. That's actually something that we would like to recommend for all three of these, all three of these scenarios, and the Civic Center as well. So we have 5 different types of real estate product that we worked on developing in these scenarios. Employment and office, which would be local job producing office space for local businesses and for the people who live in Maple Valley to come and work. The Civic Campus is going to be 7 acres of each of the 3 scenarios. I believe that's something that the city is very excited about. Just to step back real quick, actually, the site itself is 51 acres. With the border and the outline that Sarah's touched on, we think we have around 30 acres to work with, and so these are where the numbers are going to come from. The small R retail, you can see is we've attributed 3 acres, but that is not a 3-acre plot like a super center. That would be spread out, small local businesses, ice cream shops, art galleries, those sorts of walkable types of retail, and to generate the tax base that those businesses would come up with. As you can see, there are 3 different levels of residential housing, and then of course the DigiPen campus that we're all very excited about. At first, at the beginning of the quarter, we started with a priority list. We took this from, I believe, a type of poll that was taken amongst a bunch of people, what would be important to them. We ranked them on a scale of 1 to 10, and as you can see, what we came up with were many community types of things, trailheads, recreation centers, areas for people to come and share time together, restaurants, the movie theater, and single-family residential were some of the few things that were lowest on our list. Farmers market, I think we all realize should be a bigger number, and we'll touch on that in a minute. So as you can see, childcare, medical services, and a suburban co-working space that people, entrepreneurs and local people, accountants and attorneys and such, that they could come and put their minds together in one communal place is something that we're very excited about. Childcare services is always a big hit with any sort of bedroom community. And medical services is a big growth industry these days. Not hospital, but more of clinics and offices. Commercial retail, microbreweries, of course, are very big. The farmers market is a real exciting idea that we spoke about the last time we were here. A hotel is an idea that could work, and we'll touch on it a little bit here going on in a minute. I think that we've got some good ideas in that space as well. The Civic Campus can be any number of things. Of course, a rec center that brings the community together is a fantastic idea. A locale information center, civic greens, gathering spaces for people, to start parades, walks, marathons, even an amphitheater, I think, could be a fun idea. Movies on the green in the summer, all those sorts of things to really draw people to the space. Multifamily residential obviously is a very hot market right now, and it is not fully utilized here in town. There are many different options, and we have time to talk about all of the different things that we can do. We have no we have no ideas about really dense urban types of things, but more spread out small wooden buildings. I think that these are a really neat concept. And also we're going to talk a little bit about cottages that can be leased. They could be put on a land lease with a developer who manages and runs them, similar to a bed and breakfast. People who want to come for a weekend on their way to spending time in the active forest, or on the way to Crystal Mountain to go skiing, or just to be in this area for an extended period of time. And of course, DigiPen. Active forest is something Inga's going to talk about a little bit later, but because we are conserving nearly 20 acres of space, we can actually put that space to work with a lease type structure. We've done quite a bit of research on how you can capitalize and still keep the actual environment intact, and it can be a real draw from all over the surrounding area. So, of our three proposals, we spent lots of time looking at sales comps for all of these different types of land in the local area and a little bit wider, Covington, places like that, in the past couple of years, and what can be expected to sell different plotted types of real estate to developers to work on. For the retail type of space, you're looking at just under $600,000 an acre in this area, $593,000. For commercial office space, $976,000 an acre, and for multifamily residential, it's $500,000 for an acre. So if you keep those numbers in mind, this is the DigiPen campus scenario. In this scenario, we have 5.5 acres of office space for them and 4.5 acres for their 200 units. We have an active forest. Oh, Inga, do you remember the rate? Was that $50,000?
Yes.
$50,000 a year? Okay. 3 acres of retail commercial, 6 acres of other office and employment. Of course, unless you sell the civic campus land to yourself, that's going to bring in 0. And then 4 acres of residential, which in our guesstimate could be nearly $23 million coming back to the city in this scenario, just from the land acquisition, the sales to developers to then develop these products in these areas. This is a quick rendering by Sarah about how that can look, but later on she's going to get more into her ideas of how the beautiful layout could be. In the active forest scenario, there is no DigiPen. Oops. 3 acres of retail. This has 7 acres of multifamily housing, and then 3 acres of those cottages that I spoke on earlier, leased or sold to a developer to run a sort of bed and breakfast. Many units spread out maybe at the tree line. People who are coming and going want to stay for a few days, want to stay for a week. Maybe DigiPen rents them to people who come in from out of town, those sorts of things. And this scenario leaves 3 or 4 acres left over and is nearly $6 million less than the DigiPen campus. And finally, the third option has no cottages, 10 acres of multifamily, and is $16.5 million. So here they are all side by side. Of course, we can share this with anyone who's interested to look a little bit deeper, and I can also share with you the numbers of the value of the acreage as well. Sean is going to talk about retail.
So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the retail planning. Since like we did some research and analysis behind all the numbers that you see through all the presentation, and this is just only an exposure of the retail planning part. So as you see that we have like three scenario, and one for DigiPen coming and the other two DigiPen no. So this is the first one, and this is for the scenario DigiPen. And then we have like 3 acres of retail, and it would be absorbed in the future over like 10 years. So as you will see here, there are some grocery stores and drugstores and restaurants. So we're gonna sell this part of land to one developer or 2 developers or something, and then they would try to develop this acre to have some retail stores. And then it is not just the retails that you will see here in Maple Valley. Since like grocery, maybe you thought that we already have like some grocery stores, but why we still want more? Since like under our research, there are still some demand leakage out of Maple Valley. Think about it. You have like some people, they drive to other town to do the shopping. So this is the one part of the leakage of the demand. So this is why we bring that many other retails in 10 years. So in 10 years, we will have, if the DigiPen come, we will have more like 40,000 people, 4,000 people. So this would bring more purchasing power, and also it would produce more retail. And so this is the first scenario for DigiPen coming, and it would be like totally 3 acres of retail absorption in 10 years. And this is the second one. We're doing this assumption basing on that DigiPen didn't come. But we still have like people here, and we still have some purchasing power that was leaked outside the Maple Valley. So we will still have like more drugstores and cosmetics and restaurants. And this kind of retail will bring really high rent. So this would be like most valuable parts inside our planning. So next one, we're gonna talk about the active forest scenario. So here I will transfer our information to Inga.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So the active forest is a concept that allows you to use your buffer zone. We're working with about 20 acres to utilize the space from the ground up to be able to create a placemaking type of field to this beautiful piece of property that you already have, without destroying the beauty that it has and the draw that it will have for people who want to enjoy what you already have on the site. I like this picture just because of the type of trees you have. It's really beautiful to utilize the color and the beauty and build podiums that are high up, as well as beautiful areas down below that you can use. The idea is to bring families, so that you're using everybody that can use the space can be anybody from the age 3 up to 80. The reason that that's possible is because this area will be developed so that the lower areas are built with safety nets, low rope courses, and other rope courses and net courses that can be utilized in many different ways other than just zip lining. Zip lining, very, very exciting, but you need more staff, you need safety harnesses, and the amount of throughput of who can go through the zip lining is much lower. It would not bring in quite as much money as the courses that can put through anywhere from 500 to 800 people a day in the lower areas. You will definitely be able to attract people from a radius of about 50 miles in surrounding, or about an hour to an hour and a half driving time. People are willing to come and do this. It is very, very successful, and it's fun for everybody in the family. The idea is to create indoor, outdoor spaces so that you can utilize these spaces whether the weather's good or bad. People don't care about the weather as long as they have somewhere to sit, somewhere to rest, and something to eat. And that is what you'll be able to provide through our retail, which will dovetail very neatly into the spaces that we use, the food that we provide, places to sit, and podiums where people can see what everybody in the family is actually doing. This is just an interesting idea for courses that are lower down, which could be a roller coaster type zip line. I've not pressed this button before to see how this will work, but I'm going to try. Let's see. This particular course is actually out of Holland, and you can just see what's possible. Listen to it.
That was fun.
Good, yeah. So the really neat thing about using this beautiful space you have is that with all this beautiful space, you can actually bring in money. It would be on a type of land lease. This is what people really, really enjoy to do, and it can really bring in good money. And it doesn't cost that much to create these structures and to manage them, especially if you're utilizing the lower zones. I'm not sure how to move past this.
Probably have to close it. On the computer, you can close the window.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Or just shrink the
There you go. It's that arrow.
Sorry.
There's a lot of ways to use the different nets for putting bouncy structures within them. Some people who have children, if you have children, which so many of us do, and families, it's really nice to create nets that have big bouncing balls in them. And this is what kids absolutely love. They learn how to use their bodies safely. Oh. Yes, yes, you can. I don't know who's going to be talking further after this,
I
but
believe Sarah's
Sarah, do you want
the
to?
concept of it.
Not this.
Well, this is just an idea of looking at how DigiPen could really bring a lot to this particular site. The campus, the youth, the energy that they will bring to be able to develop this and bring people here to make the retail strong is really going to be a huge benefit for you if you do this. Out of the 3 scenarios that we looked at, it's the most profitable for you but you could use any combination of what we've actually shown here. Do you want to speak further here, Sarah?
Go ahead.
Good. Okay. For the civic campus.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Alex, can you
Oh, yeah, I'll
speak
do-
to
I'll
these
do it.
ones because sorry,
Sure, this is just a conceptual drawings of some ideas that we've had for the Civic Center, trade-a-book centers, tables for people to come and go. Obviously, the farmer's market can either be a permanent structure or it can be tents just on weekends when people are most likely there. I'm sure that people will want to bring their dogs. You can decide if that's what you'd like to do. Go back here. Yeah, this is the Civic Center conceptual development plan, 27 acres. The next stage in our process, we're going to continue working with the site plan, the legacy site, continue our market analysis, and we are going to focus more on the financial aspects of the program and how the city of Maple Valley will be able to benefit from that. Oh, this is the end. Oh, we're not doing
so
that?
yeah, so we'll just keep going. Okay, sorry. So we're gonna go back like quite a ways. Is there a next button on this that's easy to access, Alex?
Next one.
Like on the clicker? Oh, there it is. How do I? Sorry. All right, so going back to the plans that we kind of skimmed over really quickly. So this shows, okay, so this shows the plan for the DigiPen. And it shows just a general blocking of where parking would be, shown in the darker gray, and where the building footprints would be located, which is shown in the clear white color. Okay. Yeah, so the parking so this up here would be the Civic Center area, and the parking for the Civic Center, the retail area and the parking for retail, the office space area and the parking for office space, the residential area, and then the DigiPen residential and the DigiPen campus itself would be in the far corner. And this is just to reiterate, this is just a rough square footage and footprint of what the buildings and the building type would be, not necessarily like the final placement of particular buildings. The active forest, very similar. You would still have the civic campus being closest to the waterfront and onto the higher elevation that we want to build upon. And the employment is still to the south. Retail remains in the center with the cottage type housing on the far side closer to the waterfront as well, and on the higher elevation with the slightly lower elevation, slightly more inset being the normal residential parking. And then lastly, for the Civic Center plan, very similar to the active forest plan, with a slight additional amount of normal residential area, and that's it.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Sue, go first.
Well, Sarah, right? It was residential as well as the dorm or the student housing.
For-
So both
Which
on the,
are-
I think it was your second one, the second.
There's
So
just
with
one.
DigiPen, there was,
DigiPen has, sorry, right here
yes,
would be the normal residential.
normal,
Right here
okay.
would be the student residential.
Normal residential being multifamily or the
Market
cottages.
rate,
Yeah,
Market rate.
sorry.
Okay.
multifamily.
This would be the section for the DigiPen specific housing.
And they have both their office as well as their housing.
I have a question. Do your revenue estimates assume sale of land?
Those were for the sale
Yes.
of the,
There were no lease scenarios or anything like that.
that would be something that I would absolutely recommend the city look into. The University of Washington has had some fabulous success with that, obviously. The cottages would be a perfect opportunity for something like that. For those of you who aren't familiar, a land lease is effectively a developer renting the land from the owner for usually a very extended amount of time, 40, 50, 100 years. And whatever improvements they make to that land will revert back to the owner at the end of the lease. So even if you build a skyscraper, it's not yours any longer once the lease runs out. So with the cottages, for instance, you could work out a deal, something like that. The majority of developers, I would venture to guess, would want to purchase the land, build, whether it's the apartments or the multifamily units, the office space, the retail space, and then either sell it or retain it for their own income streams. But these numbers, perfect, thank you. These numbers are conservative estimates in today's market of what the land could be valued at.
so the
Yes.
whole point to answer that is, at the low end, it's 16 and a half, the high end, it's $23 million. These are approximate yields based on this number of acreage at the conservative values in today's market. Obviously, this project takes many years to get built, and obviously it doesn't include capital costs that somebody has to pay for. So these are numbers of value in what we call as-is, where-is condition. There's no utilities, there's no curb, gutter, and sidewalk, there's no streets, and that's next quarter's assignment to figure out what that costs to get land ready for sale or lease.
Question. You've indicated in this chart that the DigiPen would likely be the most economically rewarding opportunity. What is the most likely opportunity to actually occur?
Well, since we're not privy to
We're not privy to-
conversations between the city and DigiPen,
Well, no, I'm talking about based on your market analysis and what you see going on in the community, which of these is more likely to occur just based on the economy and the community?
well, it's pretty simple. Without DigiPen, you have very close yields
Yes.
between this mix of uses. And the mix of uses was taken from the public survey and our understanding of the market. So we took the public survey, the wants of the community, and what we think the market would pay for based on absorption of population and demand, like any other market study. And this is our basic spread, if you will, across these different uses. So the good news is, at the minimum, it's $16.5 million worth of something that we think the market would support here. And these are fairly conservative.
The extension of that then would be, without DigiPen, you're saying that nothing else is likely to happen easily or naturally?
I'm saying that it's worth $16.5 million of these various uses.
Potentially worth that much.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what yeah. Do I know who's going to buy the land today? No. Do we think there's a market for these uses? Yes. Definitively, yes. Yes, absolutely. Or we wouldn't have put them there, or they wouldn't.
And companies like DigiPen, there are other similar companies, if they are found, if they are marketed to and reached out to and communicated with, that would do a similar type of thing, I'm sure here. The main difference, which is nearly $1 million between these other two scenarios, is that fewer cottages and less multifamily there are fewer units effectively rented at a higher price. So the more you pull that way brings up the value of the land.
So my question is about the active forest space. You have 20 acres written up there, but a good portion of that is around the buffer. So are you envisioning not only the concentrated open space in the forest area in the middle, but also these active forest elements all the way around the property?
Yep.
That would be the best scenario. The majority of the maples themselves are on a large hill, which would be great for going down, but just that. I'm sure that there would have to be lots of conversations between zoning and the city and if we were able to use that boundary, but it would be a great use for something that can retain its beauty, which is its purpose, but also be put to use for the city.
And the active forest represents about 20% of the financial yield, so it's not a deal breaker. If you didn't have any active forest, so you're in the $13 to $14 million yield, you're not going to sell those 20 acres, end of story. If you lease them for active forest, or there is no market for active forest, then you're in the $13 to $14 million range. It's a really creative idea to generate revenue and to maintain the forest. Because if you don't, and you have 20 acres of trees, who's going to go make sure those trees are still there in 50 years? Trees don't just stay there. They require some maintenance, because remember, the rest of the site is intensely developed. So all that grading and all that non-point source pollution and all the storm drain and all the curb gutter and sidewalk has an impact on the forest. It doesn't just get painted on there. So we're trying to find a creative way, and they have found a creative way to use this open space. Now, we don't know there's a market for it. We think there's a market for it, but it's, we think, a very good idea to explore. All of this is somewhat hypothetical because we haven't spoken to zipline companies yet, because that's not our job now. And if everybody in this room tells us leave the trees, we'll leave the trees.
No, we need that zip line.
Yeah, it looks pretty bouncy.
Who else had a question?
It was with Laura's on the perimeter of the active forest. So the active forest included the 140-foot buffers around. I'm looking at 4 acres not used on 2 of those scenarios. Are those just natural forests?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
left
it
open, just
right, or it's too
not
steep
used.
sloped, or we don't need it, or there's no sense in cutting down trees. What's the difference? If the net financial is enough to tip the balance, leave the trees. We think that 20% of 51 acres, 40% untouched, 60% developed, seems to be a reasonable approach. If everybody in the town says, burn that down, don't do that, fine. But in order to get you financially, which was our original assignment, to figure out how to pay for this, right? That seems to be a reasonable ratio. 40% preserved, even active forest, 60% developed.
But
Yeah.
yes, there are, I'm sorry, real quick. There will be excess acreage either way if the city decides they want X amount of multifamily units. They like the number that's here. That can be done. This, we think, is a great fair to everyone kind of composite of how it can be made to work.
Yeah.
Two questions. One regarding the location of the buildings that we saw. I thought I heard the woman say that it was a conceptual drawing and the location wasn't necessarily what you're recommending. Those might be moved around. And I guess I'm marrying that with what I thought I saw was the clusters of trees that you were recommending we may preserve. And because I don't see an overlay, I'm envisioning that there's a stand of cedar trees right through the middle of the buildings and a stand of, yeah, okay, so that's correct. So I don't see that that's compatible with preserving the trees that you asked us to preserve, so that's what I'm...
It is compatible with the preserving the trees that were asked to be preserved. Can I see the picture possible? So the thing that might be a little bit misleading is this barrier, this black line right here, is not the boundary of the site, it's the tree buffer boundary. So I'm building within the tree buffer boundary, and the large area that have the trees that we're spoken about preserving actually starts over here and comes all the way out around.
That helps. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
sorry, it's a little bit.
So what's
And
The
yeah, the
cedars-
cedars do go
The
through.
cedars were a secondary, it would be nice to preserve if possible type scenario. They weren't the priority for preserving as these were over here. I would like to preserve as much as possible. The residential does tend to sit up on a ledge, natural ledge above where we would have the retail and the civic campus be. So depending on how things get blocked out, we could leave a small portion of this, except for a roadway that would cross it at some point.
So 2 questions to follow up on that. So is it conceivable that that residential building could basically be just separated from the rest of it?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
just to
And then-
clarify, this is not a building. These
Okay.
are areas of usage.
Okay, thank you. That
Many small buildings.
Yes,
Okay,
many
makes
small
sense.
buildings
These are not
outlined.
solid buildings.
No, that would be a massive building.
These are
Yeah.
development areas.
Okay, then the other question is, if we bring DigiPen onto this site, and you're recommending that we have what was it, 4 acres of $4 million of residential, I think is what I saw for the DigiPen plan? Are you recommending the additional residential, now assuming that the DigiPen campus were to come with 200 units for 400 students, are you recommending that the additional residential is necessary to make the quote-unquote rooftops and the retail viable, or you're saying, let's do the residential A because we have room, and B because it nets up more income for the city to do development?
latter.
So the latter.
The
Okay.
whole concept here is to try to optimize 2 things.
Got it.
The preservation of open space and the financial viability of the plan.
So then the additional residential in the DigiPen campus option, if we were to pursue that, could be something that could be phased in.
This is all phasing. This is
Oh,
not a
yeah.
snapshot the
Absolutely.
first day. This could be 10 years worth of absorption.
We could pursue that and,
Right.
and ultimately say we don't want that, and over a period of time, that portion could be used for active recreation or passive or something along those lines.
But the next level of work is to take these concepts and put them into somewhat sophisticated spreadsheets, mostly Alex's work, next quarter, to see what the absorption is, because you have very significant capital costs to get the site ready for development.
Right.
And in order to understand that financial model, you have to make some basic assumptions. The snapshots show that this is very likely financially viable. We didn't know that the last time we were here, and we think this is very good news. Whether it's 5 acres here or there, some more squirrels or less squirrels, we can discuss that. But we think we're in the black, so to speak, moving forward. If we were in the red, we would tell you tonight, and you tell us to go fix something else. But it's not. It's doable.
Also, the DigiPen, sorry real quick, the DigiPen scenario more than doubles the amount of people who would be going to sleep in this area at night, and as Yingxi touched on with her retail, that's a different need, I think, for the retail that's there for those people. The DigiPen folks are going to be accessing that retail for a different reason than the surrounding.
We're not waiting for the market. If DigiPen were here, we're creating the market
Absolutely.
on the site. That's a very important strategy. We don't know yet if they're coming, but even if DigiPen were some other flavor of the month employment with a residential component, it's a grand slam home run. It's a market for itself, because most students don't have a car, we don't want cars, and they can walk, and what do students do? They spend their parents' money. So go spend your money in 15 new retail stores, 24 hours a day. Now we're in the green, so to speak.
And to speak to her question earlier about ground lease, DigiPen would be the perfect opportunity, because they are not going to purchase the buildings, purchase the space that the people are going to be living in. It would be a great opportunity.
If that's what they want, we don't know that. If it's a sale outright and they sell bonds like most universities and they want to construct it on their own dime, good for us. It doesn't matter today what they want to do. It matters that it fits and it optimizes financially. You have a question?
Yes, a question regarding the ratio of the trees in the active forest, the preserved sections of the maple and the western red cedar versus the trees that we propose to use in the buffer. How many trees belong to the buffer versus how many belong to the?
We're not at that level. We
I thought
can't.
there was a number thrown up in the beginning.
Did you guys know that?
It's acreage count. It's not trees per acre.
Yeah.
That
Not
would
trees
be-
per acre, I'm
yeah.
just saying how many acres of trees are in the buffer versus in the preserved section?
Oh,
140.
that's a good question. That's on that.
I thought it was on there, I just didn't remember what I saw.
Right?
If you go.
No.
Thought we said one.
We go to the buffer slide. Next. Next.
No, okay.
140.
The 140.
What's that left?
Next one.
Right.
The buffer slide.
How many, I'm just curious, how many of the 20 acres was in the buffer?
So I'm happy to get that answer for you. The tree buffer information did come from the consulting firm, EMS Consulting, so all we need is their metadata and we might be able to get you.
You can eyeball that at 3 to 4 acres. If you just think about it geometrically and you added this up, if that's 51, kind of look at it, it's about 10%,
And if you include this,
5
it's
acres.
20%. So,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Go back to the footprints of the
Buildings?
the buildings.
Under which scenario?
It doesn't really matter because all three of them have a similar type of footprint.
Okay.
Okay, so you have all these footprints there, and actually this is just representative of how it could fit if it was all squeezed to the left.
These are not buildings, these are development areas.
Yeah,
But
either
correct.
paving or building or development of some kind or other. So, but you have all squeezed to the left, and of course, that's just to show roughly how much it takes. So any of this stuff could be squeezed anywhere else on the property.
No, because we're trying to stay away from the trees.
But
Okay.
there,
Okay,
it could be.
on the east side is the noisy side. The east side is the side closest to the road. And so some of that things could be moved over towards the right and still fit within the needs of that particular.
Put the student housing over there?
So one of the problems in addressing,
Or the offices?
right,
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely.
one of the problems in doing this, it's more of the same of what you have. So you're driving down a road and instead of seeing green, you see neon, concrete, and pavement.
Actually, you still keep the tree buffer on the road, but there still is developable space on the east side.
Part of
Well, yeah.
He's saying, for instance, put the office space there.
Right. So just to clarify, can you go back to the, anyone, just pick one of the, except not that one.
So here you can see that there's a little
So,
on the right side, but what we were really struggling was the access points that nurses discussed. So if you really want to kind of use the south side for the main access, you cannot really
Go to
kind of
the
cross
access.
over to that corner if you want to preserve that area.
No, I want to show.
And all of the
That's the least
utilities.
desirable preservable area.
No, the red ones are the.
Okay, but tonight we're not designing and picking wallpaper.
Right.
We're just trying to show you that conceptually, any of these footprints can be moved around. This, can you go back to the access slide, please? This is a critically important point. Until we deal with the civil engineering and the traffic issues of how to get into the site, we don't have anything to offer the market. So just because we say this is doable, doesn't mean that WashDOT or King County or anybody else in the wrong mind or the right mind will let us do this. So this is the next level of conversation to ground this plan in reality, okay? This is a major road. How you get off a major road, these are just very conceptual ideas. We know we can't come in from there, and we're not coming by helicopter, so these are the two logical ways to get into the site. Tell us if we're wrong and we'll change it.
Well, those are both excellent places to get into the site, but why not use both of them?
We might. We're not, this is just 3 flavors of the ice cream. It's certainly a very good point.
I just want, for your information, as we continue to move this forward, it's likely that WashDOT would allow one signal at one of the locations, not both. And there is a need now, a transportation struggle need in the elementary schools. So having a signal that aligns with the elementary school entrance definitely
The yellow one is
has some potential viability. But then again, having the signal down at the next one provides access to the whole town center area as well as the residential. So there's kind of some plus and minus, but I'm pretty certain WashDOT would not permit both.
Right, and saying that and doing it with WashDOT, I worked for King County for 5 years, two different worlds. So we want to get a consensus from what you guys want, and then at some point, your engineering staff, not us,
Right.
begins to have a conversation about Disneyland. Here's what we think, we know you have some ideas, that's a complicated discussion. It's not a negotiation, they own the road. But we listen to them, and this is a
Right.
start.
I'm just giving you some feedback that
Mhm.
you feel confident.
That's exciting.
Signaling,
Yeah.
giving it that it's a 45-mile-an-hour road, knowing that a signal would go there.
I mean, he's got gray hair, we do, we're gonna have a lot more by the time we get this done. But access is critically important, obviously, to develop the site, that's a given.
And David,
So
what,
I guess the question is maybe somewhat related to Laura's comment, and maybe I'll ask Laura or Scott to weigh in on this. Would your assessment change if that were a 35-mile-an-hour road rather than a 45?
He is the PE, you would have to ask him.
You know, I would speculate, just based on the existing EDT, average daily traffic counts, probably it's not gonna make a big difference whether it's 45 or 35.
And the speed limit doesn't affect it, it's actually 50 percentile. So even if we change the speed, if the drivers are still going faster, then that.
Got it.
but it will need a dedicated.
And getting back to that
turn
gentleman's
lane.
very good point, there are some retailers who are never gonna rent space in the middle of trees with squirrels that far off the road. Maybe we want those people, maybe we don't. Obviously, road frontage, which is the typical American scenario, has value to retail. But it also has some negative impacts, obviously, when they all want to be seen by how many cars a day are driving up and down. So all of this development play are trade-off between what are you trying to optimize. The exciting thing is we have flexibility, we have a market, we have a developable parcel, and it looks at first glance to be financially viable. That's a very good set of facts moving forward. What is it?
I just wanted to explain that with the, well, I'll just stay here, with the building footprints that were shown, they were largely centered over here. You had retail in the center with residential and office space and civic center all kind of encompassing it, which would aid in bringing customers and service to that retail area if it's not fronting the road. So that was assuming that the entry point we'd be allowed to use would be coming from the south, which would require a formation similar to that to bring business there. But if we are able to bring in traffic from this side, then there's really no reason not to explore the opportunities that are along the road right here as well.
There were 3 consecutive slides on different scenarios of retail with different square footage based on different types of retail, and I'm just curious on what basis you arrived at those figures. Was that based on some market analysis?
Yeah, go.
One more.
Right. So in theory, what I try to teach the students is what are the typical industry standards for each category of use, right? A restaurant could be 1,200 square feet or 5,000 square feet. It's not 50,000 square feet. They didn't know that until they met me. Okay. Now that they know that, we want to look at the market, which they did, run some analytics, which they did, and try to look at absorption over time. The good thing is we have 3 acres, right, 128,000 square feet and change, whatever. And this is one way to develop at a 60% or 70% lot coverage, right, of what these numbers represent. The numbers might be all wrong, they might be all right, but we're just teaching them sort of how do you get to a use of 3 acres, because we think 3 acres as a representative of 30 acres is about the appropriate balance based on the market of this town size. That is, the leakage, how many people leave the town to buy and do things in other places, and how many people live here and shop here and do these things here. We haven't tested every single one of these in the market that's next quarter. But this is a list. If some things on the list never happen, great. But it's some also taken from the survey that we were given by Matt and Tim of what optimized list of uses could be.
So when you're looking at retail, I guess it'd be nice to have it, you look at it and maybe expand it if you think things are missing. For example, if DigiPen or a college campus was on site, is there something missing that they would need to serve them? Something that should
There
be-
probably is,
And
yes.
so I would ask that, keep that
Yes.
open, because it seems like some sort of entertainment piece that, you know, would give them something to do other than.
Right, we don't think an AMC 12-plex theater, but there's probably something
An
else.
arcade or a
Yes.
bowling alley or that.
Yes. The University of Washington has a billiards space where I didn't know people there, they play, but they like, all right. But how does that work from a land value? We're not trying to drive land values down in the model. We're trying to keep them at a minimum so that you, the landowner, receive market value for that. It takes a whole lot of billiards to pay the rent to make the land values that we know are comparable in the area.
And things
So-
like brew pubs are fabulously popular these days. Those types of destination social things, whether it's a pool room or the rec center, obviously the active forest. There would probably be more quickly more of a high-end grocer with the 400 extra people living in the area, so it would be a different combination of retail.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about it since like I was doing this planning upon an assumption that like somewhere like University Village near UW, since like the DigiPen would brought like many people, and then they would produce much purchasing power. So in the DigiPen scenario, I brought like something like eye care, like bank, like hair salons, and like dry cleaners. So I check about on the Maple Valley, there is not that many this retail here right now. But you look on next 10 years, even if the DigiPen they didn't really come here, but the people here, the population in Maple Valley, they will still grow, right? So you will really need like some like different types of retail. So we would standing in this kind of point. So I add many different kinds of the retails inside these assumptions, but I think that in reality, the developer would really look on the demand in local to produce the retail types. So yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious if the city provided you with any information with respect to what uses might be in the town center area directly to the south of the site, so that you can at least understand the compatibility or competitive nature of those.
We looked at the number of housing units, the square footage of retail, what kind of retail. We saw that both in the comp plan and in the permitted development pattern and what's coming there. But we're trying to look 10 years out. So as she said, with or without DigiPen, those new residents are going to want some services. There is leakage now, so maybe this is a backfill to some of that demand that is not served locally. It may not be. Retail is a very fragile industry. Rents go up, sales go down, they're gone, right? So it's a very interesting piece. We do not suggest overplaying the retail hand. This town has lots of retail, as do many places in the state of Washington compared to many other states in America. If you do all the best practices index, this state has, now there's tax reasons for that, okay, but there's only so much demand that supports retail.
I have a question on the Oak Point development as proposed for Covington, the mixed-use project at Lake Point, and your decisions on this matrix, knowing that that is already planned and is probably 3 or 4 years out, if that has any play on kind of how you see the retail with that project being planned already. So.
Well, again, we're trying to look at the locally constructed market demand, which clearly a campus, or even the office employment itself, is daytime, so even though people aren't living there, you still have an 8 to 6 purchasing cycle every day. Employment is really key to stabilizing new retail demand. So since people are going to come to work, they're going to eat lunch, they're going to get a haircut, they're going to go here or there, go to a dry cleaner. That's all locally generated demand. If you tell us that the 3 acres should be 12 acres of retail, fine, we'll go study it. We didn't see that in our market analysis. But we didn't see 0 either.
And people also like to have their, where they live very walkable to places they want to be. So having a synergy between retail, residential, and office can really bring life to this area till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and make it a place where people want to be.
I mean, other than Sarah's great drawings, which are very valuable, this is the takeaway from tonight. This is 10 weeks worth of work, okay? So if you look at this, and you now have some confidence that some model in some way, west or east, can get you where you need to go, now you're on the road. And this is, I never saw this until tonight, so we had no influence on make it higher, they'll feel better, whatever. We didn't. They just did this on their own, so it's a fairly objective read, subject to the capital cost of infrastructure.
Right.
But that's next quarter.
I didn't know if, we're at this point, or if you've explored the more creative uses of retail in terms of smaller square footage units packed into a denser space for less rent options, for more artisan, more local people to be able to come in or leave. It's a more flexible spaces for local people, independent, not non-chain type of establishments, restaurants and that type of thing has that been explored? Is
We've
that
talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. We think that's the next quarter as we drill down into what this could be in more detail. But certainly, and we work in a number of urban neighborhoods as well, that's clearly a preferred strategy. We have to test it in market analytics to see what that might look like. Because just populating with the same retail franchise is not necessarily aesthetically or financially in anyone's interest. But people don't realize a lot about national chains, just saying, Starbucks, just saying, their rent is so low you can't believe people rent to them. Because they want the signage, they want the other things it brings. We're not starting with that philosophy here. We're starting with an average daily traffic count that's very strong in a town of high income residents with potential to bring more people here. Those are positives. We don't need to be bottom fishing just to fill this place up with the lowest level retail of everything that's already here or nearby or Covington or next door. That's not smart planning. That's competing against yourself.
Because I think our goal is to make it a destination.
Absolutely.
Entertainment, shopping, entertainment, restaurants,
Yes.
type of focus area.
Which is why Inga's idea with this active forest could be authentically everything you just said, because they do it in the Netherlands or in Switzerland, they don't have a retrain in America.
Real quick on your point, what you're talking about with the micro spaces for artisans and those sorts of things, that takes a very dedicated and very specific type of user and owner. If the city wanted to subsidize something like that, a portion of that to give back at lesser rents for local people, that's one thing, but to actually find a business person or a real estate developer to to actually build that and run that sort of thing would be very difficult to find on your own without support from all of you here
Like that,
as well.
like, just an example, like the packing house down in Anaheim in the packing district. I mean, it's a huge warehouse space that has then been converted into a high-end food court. You know, with a communal
Real cool.
space in the middle. Yeah, but it allows people to try out what they need to try out and move if they need to. And, you know, so you have these high-density buildings that you can just rent out these spaces. And again, yeah, it's a different way of thinking, but I think it's a way that we need to approach it to make it, again, destination oriented.
And we're not doing it as a secondary concept, we're doing it as a primary concept. So you will see in our drawings and further refinement next quarter, lots of them.
In your future work that you'll be doing, is one element an estimate or a quantification of the impact on the cost of city services?
Right, so there's a capital budget item of how do you get the site ready for development, and then there's the operating side of what does this yield, right? Remember, this is a snapshot, so even if you had that money in the bank tomorrow, net against the capital cost of city improvements, what does it look like annualized over 30 years? That's a fairly sophisticated model that we have to do.
I'm also talking not just about one-time capital expenses, but operating, like city services.
Right, so we have to marry that against your tax structure.
Right.
And that's property and sales tax, and look at whether that's hopefully also in the black or green.
Right.
Okay, and yes, for sure, if DigiPen were to come here, what is that tax treatment under Washington state law? I don't want to know the answer tonight, but it may not be as favorable as others, and yet the economic spin-off of that might be very positive. So we have to look at all the array of these things from this fairly, whatever, structure of taxation in the state of Washington. That's the rules we have to live by. I'm sure DigiPen is very interested in not paying any taxes if they could come here and bring their add to the economy, right? Why would they want to pay taxes? They're tax exempt like any university. Well, okay, how much is that really worth? These are yet to be answered questions. Obviously, that scenario looks very different financially, but maybe not when you amortize those costs over 30 years. We don't know yet. We have to start with Scott getting into this issue of capital costs. That is a big deal to sort of look at how do you drag water and sewer into this site? What does it look like from a civil engineering point of view? These are not civil engineering students, but that's the next up set of tasks to complement this, right? That package can't cost more than this or we're in the red. So, and how much will the developers pay you for their pro rata share of that? What are the impact fees? What are development fees? How does this all roll out? We need a lot more engagement from the city of Maple Valley to figure that out, and that's coming next quarter.
So you're talking about next quarter. What is the objectives for next quarter, and when will that be completed?
Well, the quarter starts on March 26th. It's the great thing about academia, and it ends on June 9th. We know that to be true. How much we can get done depends on how many students. We're always out-facing to you, the client, and in-facing if we don't have Sarah, but we will. How do we get this done? I can't make her do this, but she wants to do this.
Oh.
Right. So we've been consistent. Will is not here tonight. He's on spring break, but he's also a big part of the team. So we have to do what we can do with the students. We're not a private business, but we have to talk to Matt and Tim very soon, like next week, and talk through what yet is to be done. What do we do in spring quarter? What do we do starting June 22nd, summer quarter A, July 21st, summer quarter B, it goes on and on. So
Okay,
that's a good question.
You don't have a defined goal for next quarter.
We have 5 more years worth of work here if you'll have us. But we have to do what we can do, and it's very exciting to me to see for the first time what they could do themselves. It's not that easy to teach and get the work done simultaneously. So we're good to go now. What's next quarter is the burden is on us to talk to Tim and Matt and work that out very soon, because the first day of class, they show up, it's like, what do you want us to do? Okay, that's what we do. So I really think we should give them a round of applause. I think. And the students from UW Tacoma have been enormously helpful. Thank you very much. We're going to have at least those and others back from Tacoma next quarter. So we're trying to build this both out of the UW campuses in both places. I think this is a really positive story for you to take away. And now the rubber hits the road when we start at the site engineering scale, the market details, the capitalization modeling, the operating impacts, it goes on and on. But at least you know that under this scenario of some type, this is a possibly viable program.
Can I ask the city specific law? I look at this, we have basically three scenarios. One is really dependent upon digital. Because to me, that draws people in and it's keeping that site active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where the other two aren't as active. So how do we sell ourselves? What's the process for selling ourselves digitally? Or any other organization?
Tim and I are working on that pretty extensively. They're moving a little slower than, we'd all love to have the answer tomorrow, but they have their process that they're going through and they're analyzing multiple sites. They did tell me last time I spoke to them that their lease is up in 2 years, so they have to have an answer before their lease is up. So even if they need to renew there, they want to be able to renew with, we'll be gone in 3 years or, so that's their goal.
So is there anything our committee can do to help that process?
Not at this particular moment, but if we get there, we'll definitely reach out. They love the site. They love Maple Valley.
Cool.
If we could move all of their professors and staff down here ahead of time, then that would solve the problem.
right, David?
I can help with that. Yeah.
We need to start actively.
I'll take one for the team. I'm a giver.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, we'll be here for a few minutes if you have other questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We look forward to continuing on. Thanks to Tim and Matt and Laura. We really appreciate this opportunity and we hope you find it useful.